Hi.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Sit Down Talk. Well, no, we don't know what we calling this joint.
The sit down. Come
on now.
The sit down talk.
Here we go.
We've been calling the sit down talk informally forever. That's just what it is.
I like it. I hate it. I hate it, but I like it.
Yeah, sometimes that's just what it is, and we just gotta go with it because it's not the name, it's the content that makes it poppin', right?
Right.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Sit Down Talk. My name is Kier.
And I'm Noemie.
And we appreciate you for looking at our faces today. So just for making it in, I want you to give yourself a round of applause. Come on now. Yeah. I'm super hyped. I'm super hyped about this conversation today.
It's about the conversation?
It's the conversation
you
today.
You look really good too.
Where you going? I do what I can.
He'd be surprised, man. I don't know if it's a t-shirt and like Nike sweatsuit type of day or this like, real suave looking. I don't know. You just look good. You got your hair cut. Like, hold up.
Yeah, I'm feeling myself right now.
He cute. Mm-hmm. That's my husband. Okay, let's talk. We always do this.
All right, so thank you for the compliments. We just started talking. We always talking about the lovey-dovey. I get tired of talking about that after a while. I know. Today we are talking about submission or submissiveness. I say submissiveness. She say submission.
I say submission.
I say submissiveness because it's the act of being submissive or the expectation for you to be submissive to or for your partner.
I think they could be used interchangeably, and even if they can't, we're doing it now. So
there you go.
Let me just give you guys a background of where this question even came from. So on my page, I just did a sporadic Q&A.
Sporadic, that's a good word.
Or random. Random Q&A on my page. I'm really trying to build up some content and build up, a following. So I just kind of put it out there where anybody can ask me any question. And a lot of the questions were about communication style, how we kind of navigate in our relationship. So when I saw the submission question, I was like, we've never talked about that.
What was the question specifically?
It was just how do you guys feel about submission?
Submission, okay.
Do you feel, does Kier expect you to submit to him?
Yeah, and it's funny, when we got the question, I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. And we started talking about it and we found out that guess what?
We disagree.
We disagree on it. This is something that we've never talked about, but I see it up and down my social media timelines a lot, and I don't know whether it's just a black cultural thing. Do me a favor, below in the comment section, I want you to tell me before we even start talking what you think submissiveness is.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you say that because I definitely think submission is something that is highly talked about in Haitian culture. And if you don't know, I grew up in a very traditional Haitian household.
Saspois.
But go ahead, you want to spit out some other Creole words?
Lambi.
What else? What's your favorite
Saskaboui.
What's your favorite?
Saskaboui is my favorite.
Blanc manger.
Blanc manger is my favorite dessert. Saskaboui is my favorite.
But I thought you loved lambi.
I do, but it's something about that goat that just sits and gets tender.
Cabri is
Oh, it's cabri. I thought it was
cabri. The way we say roll. No, there's no rolling of the tongue. Your R's are in the back. No, that's just the American accent. Our R's are in the back of your throat. So if you ever listen to French people, they don't roll their R's. I don't know how to explain it. Whatever. Anyway, one thing that I've noticed just about religion, I also grew up in a very strict Haitian Catholic family, but there was a language barrier. So a lot of what I've learned about the Bible and religion were more from actions than it was from the text. Even when I went to church, it was in French or Creole. I never really went to English churches until I was much older, and I feel any mannerisms, anything that was built in me religion-wise was already there by that point. I'm interested to have this conversation because one, I've never talked about it in English, and two, I want to know how different our views are, because I still feel in the end will be the same. It's just the way that we get to that discussion will be different.
Yeah, I
actually have no idea.
What's funny to me is our relationship has gone this many years plus a marriage and never been a conversation and a baby. So it begs the question, how important is that to a relationship? Because clearly it's not that important to us, and we can function.
Yeah.
Not to say that'll be the same for everybody out there, but just putting that on your radar.
Yeah.
When you first started talking about submissiveness or submission, the first thing I thought was what I see on my Twitter and Instagram timeline.
So what do you see?
Usually I see it's either men or women. A man saying, you know, when I get married one day, I want to have a submissive wife. Usually sometimes I see submissive and obedient. The word obedient makes me cringe.
Men actually say that?
Yes. We were at a wedding where that was in the vows, an obedient wife.
We were?
Oh yeah.
It was our wedding?
No.
Oh.
But that's the language that
that's
was
crazy.
Well, I'm not
gonna say it's crazy. I just follow mostly women, so yeah. I would never see that.
Even the women I follow on Twitter, like I want to be submissive to my husband. I want a man who can lead so that I can be submissive to him. Maybe my brain just works differently.
So how do you read that? Like, how do you internalize what that message is? Like, what does that sound like to you?
To me, it sounds like what I think submissiveness is. The way I define submissiveness is taking a step back from the power that you wield in order to let somebody else either have control of the situation or take that power of leadership. When there are two dogs, like the way dogs operate, there's always a more dominant animal, and the animal dominates the more submissive animal. And the submissive animal will lay on its back and yield its power. I give up, I yield my power to you.
That's what you think that, like, being a submissive wife looks like.
And I think that's what those people are characterizing when they say I want a submissive wife sometimes. And I know somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh man, that's a bit of an extreme, but no, not really. There's two Rottweilers on the street and one is more dominant than the other, and he gets that one on his back and that one yields his power. Or like, I submit, if you're in a wrestling match and someone gets you in a position where they have complete power and control over how much pain you'll be in, you tap out and you yield your power to that person for them to have control. And I don't know, maybe I was raised in a family where the men don't have the dominant voice, the women do. I'm used to very strong matriarchal figures who make decisions in the household, who make decisions for the family, both the immediate family and the extended. So I'm wired a little different, you know? And to me, I don't understand why women give so much of their power to men with that. And it's like, I want a man who can lead. And I'm like, well, maybe that's not absolute, but my wife is a really good leader. Look at all the shit I got. It's because what?
You don't feel like you lead?
I feel like in some ways, but I don't have the ultimate desire to say, come on, baby, I'm about to lead this relationship.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
But that's what some dudes want though. And then there are women who want a man who's gonna come in and demonstrate all the skills and capabilities to be able to be like, you know what, I got this family. These are the decisions we're gonna make to move forward. And I'm like, yeah, sis, but what if he ain't good at that?
Oh man.
And where does a man's identity lie if he believes in his head that that's what a man should be? You should be decisive. You should be a leader of your family, leader of your household. What if he's not good at that and he's still trying to do that because without it, he doesn't feel like he's a man?
Wow.
Like, what kind of person are you left to be a partner with? That's why that language is so dangerous, because it could be reducing if that's not what you are.
So, I feel like I opened a can of worms.
I told y'all I was excited for this one.
So that's not my interpretation.
Give it to us. What's your interpretation?
I feel like there are a lot of concepts, a lot of words, just a lot of ideas that are fluid.
Okay.
And for me, I do believe that submission meant... That's the ice.
Our refrigerator just pooped.
Certain words and ideas like change with time. They're fluid, right? So while I definitely believe that submission meant what you're saying back in that time, submission does not mean that to me today. So that can be a me thing, that could be a times thing, that could just be a way that I was raised thing, but my interpretation of...
Sorry, I'm gonna write that down. You just made a good point and I'm gonna forget it if I let it go so long.
Something about being fluid, like the times being fluid. So when I think of submission, I don't necessarily think of whatever it says in the dictionary. I don't even know what it says in the dictionary. I kind of base it off of what I saw growing up in the marriages, mostly my parents' marriage growing up. So to me, submission isn't like, I give you all of my power. It's kind of like the concept how it's like the man is the head of the family and the woman is the neck that controls where the
You're the only person I've ever heard say that.
That's crazy to me. I feel like I've been hearing that my whole life. Also,
I love it, but
it could be that like all the women in my family have told me that growing up. So maybe it's something that Tati Nazi made up. Tati Nazi, please let us know. Did you make it up?
You know you watching. Like, just go ahead and text us.
I know
and
you
let us
watching,
know.
Tati. I feel like I've heard it my whole life. And like I said, it could just be a family thing, or it could, I don't know where else that idea was supported, but it's very much ingrained in my head.
Wow.
I feel like you lead our family, but I do the research, I do the work. You know what I mean? Like, I let you know this is here, this is here, this is there. These are the three best scenarios that I've researched and narrowed it down to. You can choose between those three. And I feel like, is that not how our relationship typically goes anyway? Like, I kind of give you like, hey, I think I want to do this. I got this option and this option. What you think? I like this one, so we go with the one you chose.
It does now. Our relationship does now. But it wasn't that different before, though. Like, that's just something that we don't trip off of. But I do have friends, and I've had even people who I've had like mental health related conversations with, men talk about how that's an issue in their relationship. You just made me think about it. It kind of all comes down to how you view submission, or how you view being valuable in your relationship, because it just so happens that that's all you need, right? You just need for me to be able to look at 3 or 4 options. Let's rewind it back, shall we? That's not how we always were. We used to be, Noemie is a person who she likes to thoroughly. I'm trying to make this not sound like shade.
It's okay.
She likes
shade me real quick.
She likes to thoroughly think through things, and sometimes that requires like, do I want the green wall? Well, if I do the green wall, the other wall will be gray, and that'll be a clash. Yeah. Well, HGTV had a green wall, but it was more pewter green and not Kelly green. So that's too many details for me.
If you could talk to me like that, I would be in freaking heaven.
I'm not your homegirl. I'm not your homegirl. I'm not your sitcom gay best friend. Like, I'm not.
We're not going off on a tangent. Please go back to the point.
You know I love a good tangent. If you want to slide down a rabbit hole, like,
Fair game.
I'm just saying. She's very thorough in the decisions that she makes. It's a lot of words. I need you to simplify things. One of my frat brothers said it best. My wife says so many words, sometimes I just stop listening and go, Like,
He went through that phase. It pissed me off.
I can only hear so many of the words.
I'm a lot, like, I've simplified the task that I need you to do.
A lot better is an understatement. Okay. Like, you've become so much better. I can ingest like at least 40% of what you say now.
40?
It used to be 10. Baby, we planning that wedding and you were going through all them details.
Do you think I wasn't aware? Because you remind me as if I didn't know that you were not listening.
It's not that I don't think you're aware. It's just that the ultimate goal is the prize for you. That you're like, any means that I gotta do this by any means necessary is how it's gonna happen. So it's like, yeah, I'm aware, but like, it had to be done. It's like, I still had to hear all that. Like, I didn't care. Either way, I got that off today. I'm gonna pay for that later. She simplifies things in a way that I can understand. Cool, I can do something with. It took us years to do that, and a whole bunch of arguments, whole bunch of disagreements. Me pretending like it wasn't too much, like it was. It ain't work. It ain't work. So yeah. Damn, too far down the rabbit hole.
Always do this.
Too far down the rabbit hole. I don't know where we were.
We basically have different opinions on submission.
We did, which we didn't even get to.
And we didn't always have this mindset.
Do you know what though? That's wild. You feel like I contribute more than I feel like I contribute.
That's wild to me. This is where my traditional upbringing comes into play. Like, I just feel like by virtue of being the man and the head of the family, like that alone and that title is a lot. Like,
what does
God
mean,
forbid financially, if we, God forbid, you know what I mean? Like, we lose all our money, we lose everything. I just feel like if anybody were, not to blame, but if anybody were to take the brunt of that frustration, it would be you, because you're the man. You know what I mean? You're the provider. You're the person that's supposed to protect the family. So I feel like because of the risk, or because of the fallout that you would endure, like that just, does that make sense?
That seems to me like something that we hold on from yesteryear. Like how people kind of over romanticize relationships from like the 50s and the 60s. Like, I wonder like how my grandparents had it. And truth be told, like, your grandmother probably wasn't happy she was just had to go with it.
Well, question really quick though. So I mentioned that for me, I feel like times and ideas and stuff are fluid, right? Through time. Do you feel like do you hear women say like they want a relationship like their grandparents?
Absolutely.
That's crazy. I never hear that.
Absolutely.
I've never heard that.
Things aren't like it used to be. Like your grandparents don't have the relationship that you think they have probably. We really romanticize the past, and we forget that a lot of times the reason that the man was the breadwinner is because women couldn't work. Yeah. And a lot of times the reason that your grandmother couldn't leave is because she couldn't go where? Mm-hmm. Be hired by whom? Mm-hmm. Not be outcasted by whom for being a divorced wife. So we hold on to those old traditions that don't make sense anymore. Women don't even need men the same way that they used to.
Well, some people do that.
A lot more than I would think if I didn't have proof talking to people and just being out in the world. Let's do a poll. Yeah. How many of you all believe... Can we do a poll anymore?
I don't think we have polls anymore. But I think YouTube... rid us of that.
Yeah, there are women that I know that really feel that way, or men that I know. Man, my grandmother didn't question anything.
Oh, that's a whole nother bag now.
They come from the same store. Looking at the time that's passed as if it's better than the time we have present is really dangerous. Yeah.
I did not know it would get this deep when I asked him this question.
I told you we do not agree on this. Like, I don't understand.
But wait, what don't we agree on?
What submission means.
Oh, for sure. But I think we do agree on where it fits in our relationship, and that's like nowhere. Like submission's not really a thing in the traditional sense.
Hasn't always been. I'm about to say something on the sit down talk that I don't think I've ever said to you.
Hold on. I'm scared.
It was a little bit of an issue when we first started talking. You were very headstrong. Mm-hmm. And while I love that about you, you were like aggressively headstrong. And I know you now, so I know what you mean when you say words. But at the time, it's like, well, no, I'm smarter than you. I know better, so this is what we're going to do. Mm. And it was very reducing at the time. And it felt like, damn, I wish, sometimes like maybe, I hope this isn't like toxic masculinity.
We're about to find out.
Which I can't wait till we do an episode on that.
Y'all gonna let us know if it is.
I low-key hate that term. Sometimes it would be nice to have what I say just be the end sometimes. Mm-hmm. And not have to kind of do the back and forth with everything. And then I had to ask myself, well, where does that come from? And I never found the answer, but as time goes along, I realized that it's not a knock on you when I say, yeah, babe, I think we should do this. And you're like, no, we should probably do X, Y, Z. It's just the fact that you've researched it, you've thought about it, and just because the tone doesn't sit well with me, that doesn't mean that you're like ill-intended. But I don't know if a lot of men can process that the same way, because in communities, we don't operate like that. I would never let one of my homies talk to me the way you talk.
I talk to you that.
You don't talk to me crazy, but sometimes you can be very direct. Sometimes it hurts the feels. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's also a personality thing too. Yeah,
but you shouldn't have to be apologetic for it just because it rubs me in a way that doesn't always feel good. You know what I'm saying? We would come to blows for that. Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
you want to know something crazy?
Absolutely.
One of the things that I loved the most about you in the beginning of our relationship was that you didn't push back. Because I was always like, I'm not going to say always, but I had experiences in previous relationships where my thoughts and my opinions weren't like considered ever. So like one of the things that I loved about our relationship, or so I thought, that like it's like, yo, he really trusts me to make decisions. Like that's so dope. Because I do a lot of I research for fun, y'all. Like that's my ish.
Does that?
That's just who I am.
Her.
That's why I get things done. Like I am now unapologetic about the things that men in past relationships have kind of like knocked me for, because I found a space where I can be that and do that authentically in my relationship, and we winning because of it. You know what I mean? So it's just so funny to me that we were looking at the same situation in the beginning of our relationship, but that's where the communication part kind of comes into play. And it's like you getting to know me better, and then also you have expressed that later on in our relationship, which prompted me to change my approach and when I talk to you. So not in this particular way, but I definitely knew that like my tone, and I was a little a lot of aggressive in the beginning, and that's why I'm a lot more mindful of that now. But that is kind of funny to me that we're kind of looking at the same situation and had two totally different experiences with that.
It just so happens that I'm not the type of man that feels like I need that from you to be a man.
Would you like that more?
Nah, I like you the way you are. I don't have a problem stepping back from my power. I know what my power is. Yeah. So I find a little bit of joy in relinquishing a little bit of my power so other people can like shine brighter. Like I like that. You can't be good at everything. I like it when other people are good at the stuff I'm not. It takes a lot of self work to get there though. I tell you that much.
I just feel like we're giving you the like 0 to 140 seconds answer and not really explaining the work. But just know that that's years of work, years of therapy, years of arguments and fights.
All that.
For us to get to the place that we're at now.
All that.
But if you stick with us through the sit down talk and whatever it turns out to be, you'll get all of that information.
I think when we talk about submissiveness, it's like 3 different categories. The biblical or religious category. I don't want to say biblical because there are Muslims in North Africa who look at marriage very differently than the traditional Christian view of marriage. Yeah. We can look at it in like the humanistic social context, which would be like all the day-to-day stuff that goes on in your marriage or relationship. And then the third is we can look at it from a sexual context, which is completely different.
Okay, so question. Did you say historical?
Yeah.
Okay, you did already. Okay, all right.
Yeah, and like historical context can kind of, I guess like the thing we were talking about earlier with like your grandma in the 1960s, that could fit in.
Or both. Even like the 50s when like the war ended and like women who were in the workplace.
Facts.
You know, men came back and your typical executive husband is back from the war. You know, you don't gotta work, you gotta come back. You know what I mean? And that was a shift in just women's history. Yeah. Because not everybody wanted to go back home. Yeah, yeah. You know, so
she doesn't want to go back and be a housewife anymore. She finds value in working in the field. So now what?
Oh,
you know, now what? And back in the 50s, you know, your grandpa wasn't about to sit at the table and say, okay, baby, how do you feel? No. No. Yeah. This is what we doing.
Wow, I've never thought about it. Outside of me not living that life, I've never thought about it in the historical context and thought about people today preferring that like that kind of relationship. No shade towards it. I've never had that conversation with another woman in that context before. Like as
that's
an adult.
That's very surprising.
I've never. That's why when you're like what you're saying, I'm not denouncing it or saying that it's, you know, incorrect or whatever. I'm just like I honestly have never had that kind of conversation with a woman, even an older woman, because you know the women in my family. They're not too different than the women in your family. So like it's wow.
Shout out to your social environment and your upbringing. It's going to dictate the way you see things.
The only person that I know that was like that was my grandmother. I don't know anybody like that.
My grandmother,
or at least willing to tell me that.
My grandmother had 5 kids. She didn't marry. All of them have different fathers. She didn't marry any of those men. She didn't marry any of them, and that was her choice. Yeah. She was the youngest of 12 kids. So, and that was back in the day. That's something that you ain't do.
My grandmother had 11 kids with my grandfather. My grandfather also had a whole bunch of kids outside of the marriage, and she helped raise them.
It's just we ain't doing no fences, man. That's a whole nother story. That's in my family too. That's happened, but that's.
I mean, what family hasn't it?
Shout out to submission, right?
Wow. If I could have a conversation with my grandma today, and I've talked to her.
What would y'all talk about?
I remember asking her, like, why did you have so many kids? And she was like, well, what was there else to do? And I was like, that's real. Okay. That's real. I mean,
back then, she also didn't have a lot of options. Like, I wish I could talk to my grandfather. My mother's father, I don't know anything about him. If he could see, like, the way that I raised my daughter and the way I talk to my wife, I wonder what he would say. And that's not any type of indictment on him, because he grew up in a different time. You know, my grandson will probably be a lot more enlightened than I am. in terms of like how to treat people and how to treat women.
Who knows?
Or it could be the opposite, and we could be in Handmaid's Tale.
Like the rate that this country is going, I don't know nothing. I don't know nothing. I can just pray and hope for the best.
I didn't really grow up in the church. That's not a part of my upbringing. It's not a huge part of who I am. It's just not my way of finding God. But you did, so we have a different way of going about that. But one thing about the church is especially in Christianity, it specifically talks about a wife and like a wife's duties to a husband and like what that means. From my experience, it's tough for me not to see the level of patriarchy that's there. And how much that positively favors men. And as a man, you know, it's not easy to say this, but that exists. And it's confusing for me to see how much power is stripped women of over the years, but there's still people who find comfort in that.
Right. And so who's to tell those people who find comfort in it that it's wrong?
Nobody. And that's the thing. You just have to find another person who values that thing like you value it. Like it's not as much about being right or wrong as it is about congruency. And making sure that the person you with, y'all vibing on the same plane with that. Like we got lucky. Blessed, lucky, fortunate. Call it what it is.
We got very, very, very lucky. So
it lines up right.
A couple of days ago, I actually posted something about us being equally yoked, and even then, it's all a matter of interpretation to me. So, like, equally yoked doesn't necessarily mean that you're raised in the same religion that I'm in. I just feel like even though we grew up so differently, the way that we view God and the way that we prioritize our individual relationships with God is very similar. And I just feel like, yes, God is a part of our family. There's God in the way that he interacts with our family, God in the way that he interacts with our relationship, but also my individual relationship with God. And I just feel like, I don't know if that's Catholicism per se, but I know that's how I was raised. And I know that's how I find comfort, and that's how I communicate, and that's how I kind of live. And I just feel like you are very similar in that way, even though you don't say the same things or grew up the same way that I did.
Yeah.
You know, and like I think that's why, like with religion in general, it's very I just feel like it's interpretation just gets lost a lot of times, and depending on who you talk to, you're going to have a totally different definition of what, in this case, submission means. But for me personally, like, submission is two-sided. It's just it's multi-dimensional. I just feel like every relationship has their different, like, percentages of how people make decisions, and as long as whatever that is for your particular family is respected and understood, then that can mean submission. So in my family, it was very 50-50. Like, my dad did certain things, my mom did certain things. My mom cooked the food, my dad washed all the dishes. My dad washed all the clothes, my mom folded all the clothes and put them away. You know what I mean? So it was very, like, very strict roles, and it was very, like, sliced in half. With us, I think it depends on the day. Some days I might be doing, it might be 90-10, it might be 50-50, it might be 90-10 the other way. You know what I mean? It just kind of depends, and I just feel like we're a relationship that really thrives off of fluidity. You know what I mean? And not really having defined lines, even though that's what I prefer and what I'm used to, that doesn't work in our relationship.
When did you realize it didn't work?
I think I'm gradually realizing it more and more. I think I realized it a long time ago, but I just fought it. Like,
the old square peg into the round hole.
I'm not doing it. Yeah. No, I'm not doing it. But then it's just like, well, I married this man, and I want to be happy. I want him to be happy. I want our family to be healthy. It doesn't hurt me to do this. It's just different. In the same way that you have to get used to things with marriage, so do I. Yeah. So it's just, I'm not saying this because it's easy. I'm just saying it because, like, that's what we need to do in our marriage, because those clear lines, it doesn't work.
I would actually challenge more people to try a little bit more fluidity in their relationships in terms of gender roles. That's what we do, and there's a lot of, but a man is a man and a woman is a woman. And I think that's true depending on how you define a man or a woman. Do you define them by who they are and what they're capable of, or what they should be expected to do based on societal standards?
Right.
A lot of us try to fit ourselves into a box that ain't for us. We ain't built that box. We don't know where it came from. It got dirt on the inside of it, but we're like, oh, I gotta fit in this box. Why? I don't know, but I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense, and a lot of relationships have gone left because people are holding. People hold tight to that, like, I'm a woman, I have to do.
And I did. I was very much so like that.
Yeah.
I was so much like that before I was in this relationship, or before I took this relationship seriously. And then when this relationship became serious, it was like, ooh.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
And you can't do that with me because
I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
I know.
like that.
And the minute I was just like, I don't know if I want to do it. He's like, don't do it. It's like, for real? I'm not doing that no more.
Don't stress yourself, sis.
And that was it. And that was the end of the relationship. I mean, the end of that conversation. Sorry. That was the end of that conversation. And it was so freeing. Like, I definitely will say that I held a lot of traditional values, mostly because even though my mom is a boss, she's still very traditional.
In a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways. Like, my father made most of the decisions. My mom definitely, finessed, but I just remember her, like, letting me know that, like, make sure the man thinks he's the one making the decision.
Yo, I hate that. I absolutely hate that.
But that's how I grew up. That's how I grew up. And I think that's where my mom, coming from a very traditional, like, role, like, Haitian culture is very traditional. Yeah. That's where she found her freedom. So I don't fault her for telling me that, because that's the only way she was able to get her freedom in her relationship. Me applying that to this relationship didn't work because he's not that guy. I
feel like that dynamic minimizes voices a little bit.
Absolutely.
And if you minimize just the way the world works, I think a lot of times it's easier just to minimize women's voices, because society does that anyway, right? So in a relationship, it's not that hard. You can do that on accident. And I realized that our relationship doesn't work well when your voice is minimized. Nope. I would never want to do that, but I'm conscientious of doing that.
It didn't take much for him to figure that out.
Yeah, like I would never minimize anybody's voice. You should always be aware of your power, be a man or woman. Just because you're a woman does not mean you don't have dominant power voice in a relationship. It doesn't mean that your tongue can't kill, because that's very true. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But like, you need to be conscientious of what your power presence does to the other person. You can't just say, well, I got this leverage, so I'm going to use it against you when I'm feeling like I need to, when I need to protect myself.
Because
like,
you lose trust.
Oh, man, that breeds resentment like a...
It's just, it brings too many negatives than it does positives. Yeah. But I think that, like, this conversation is one that you should have with yourself first.
Ooh, before we even get into that, let's get into the other two types of, like, submissiveness. Yes.
Of that.
There's also, like, the social. Like, I want a woman. I don't know. I've never heard a woman say they want a man to be submissive. So I don't even think we need to go down that road. Do we need to? Do we need to discuss that? What a submissive man means?
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either. I've never heard it in that context.
If you have, let us know in the comments. Like, we genuinely. We typically,
it makes everything. That's
I'll just be honest. We typically discuss a lot of topics before we bring them to the sit down talk, but this one was just so, like, heavy on our hearts. We're like, let's just talk about it and we'll figure it out. So we want this to be interactive. If you know what a submissive man is, or if you've heard this, in a conversation or whatever, like, let us know what that means, because we genuinely don't know.
I've never heard that language, but maybe it's a thing. Yeah. But like in a social, the way I kind of get that is like, I want a wife who will allow me to do my thing, will allow me to live out my will without really holding me back. That's what I get from it. And the question I ask is like, well, how is she holding you back? And it must be a difference of opinion.
It must, because my follow-up question is like, is your will, whatever that may be, is that separate from your wife? Is that in conflict with what you have going on with your wife? Is it parallel? You know what I mean? Is it like you do your thing, she do her thing, and y'all moving in the same direction? I have too many follow-up questions. I don't know what that means.
It's a lot. And I don't think there's a really simple answer to that.
What's your answer?
I think that's a really good way to end your marriage. I also think that people can be born intrinsically good, but I think the social environment that we've created, I don't think people are good if no one's looking. I think people will take advantage of smaller, weaker people whenever they have the chance to do that. Yeah. People,
I don't think you're wrong. I just don't want to believe that.
I understand.
Yeah.
And this is no shade. Hope this don't come across wrong, but I have to live in the world that I live in and not in the world that I would like to believe exists. And in the world I live in, if there's a person who can prey on a weaker person, they'll do it more often than not, I believe. Yeah. I don't have any data, but I'm just telling you what I see.
You're a black man in America. That's enough evidence.
I see it a lot, and people will do terrible things if they think that they won't get caught for it. So
I agree.
Yeah,
I'm living in the world that I want to live in, because I know that that's right, but I can't. I don't think I have the willpower to consciously think that about the world. I have to be hopeful in order for me to be sane.
Well, I'll absorb that for you. If you ever want to test, go to your local child and family services. And just read, I don't think you can read, it's not public knowledge, but get cozy with someone that understand what happens to children in the city that you live in every day. And then I want you to tell me whether or not that shapes the way you think about people. It's what people will do for comfort, what people will do for autonomy, what people will do for power. And control. I don't think there are limits. So to me, that's an avenue to be able to have power or control over a person if you need to pull that card. And I hate to do this because it frames men negatively. I think social media does an amazing job of framing men negatively, especially black men. Not to say we don't need to take our lumps for the things that we can do better, but the hyper-criticism, it's not helpful. I think that's an avenue for someone to begin to be taken advantage of, and love is a very good avenue to begin to take advantage of someone because they won't think logically.
So you're opening my eyes. Ooh, I feel like my definition of submission is what I want it to be and not what the definition actually is.
I'm gonna push back on that. I think your definition of submission is a little bit more idealistically oriented, but I'm also the black cloud of doom and gloom, and I think I'm raining on your cookout.
Yeah. Because I'm just like, oh my God, like that sounds horrible.
Oh my God,
like
so terrible.
That's not how I view submission at all. Because I would, prior to this conversation, I will proudly call myself a submissive wife because of my, like, I guess, idealistic view of what that means. Because it doesn't mean all the traditional patriarchal, ways that historically it's meant in my mind. It doesn't mean that. It's literally, like, to me, it's just like, I submit to you, you submit to me. Like, and we just submitting. Like that.
Like homework.
I've never even considered it to be that deep. One, because, like, that's not reflective, that definition is not reflective of the conversations that I have with other women my age or even older women in my family. So it's not to say that I didn't think that that was a thing. In my mind, it was like, that's like in the 50s, like in the 40s, like nobody thinks that way now, but I think that is very naive of me to think that, because just because I don't interact with people who think that way doesn't mean that that's not very real for some people. So yeah, you definitely opened my eyes in that sense, and I'm just not going to use the word submissive, submission.
I don't like
I'm just
it.
not going to use it no more.
I think there are better words to characterize your level of dedication and willingness to let your partner, I wouldn't even say lead, I would just let your partner like shine bright and be their best selves.
But I do feel like you lead us. Like, even when you talk about this house, we wouldn't have this house without you. I'm like, I remember specifically, like, babe, you want to get this house? Because we not going to get it if you don't want to get it. And you're like, yeah, I want it. So in my mind, you made this decision.
Yeah.
I ran with it.
Hey, look, I ain't mad with it, but I'm also a person who's never satisfied with where they are. It's easier for me to see how much more I have left to do to be great than it is for me to see, like, what I've accomplished.
Lesson, that's not good.
No, God, no, it's terrible. My fraternity, the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
The only fraternity,
the
apparently.
Only fraternity. We have a saying. It says, "Do that duty that is best, leave unto the Lord the rest." And I think that's kind of like that's your mantra.
Yeah.
You're like, look, I'm gonna do the best that I can.
Yeah.
And you know what? What I can't, I can't. That's just it.
I feel like anytime you do your best, it works itself out. It may not end up the way that you want it to or that you hoped, but I always, in my personal life, it's always been better. Mm-hmm. It's always been better than I ever expected. And the minute I kind of let go of expectations and what I deserve and just doing my best and being a good person, like I'm just telling you,
this is an upbeat sit down talk. This is one of them.
I've been in a really good mood for the past like couple of weeks.
So let me ask you a question. Oh, am I comfortable doing a sexually part? Cause you like shit. Let's talk about it.
I love to share about sex.
I just
have sex with your husband.
Yeah, please, like.
And have sex with your wives.
Yes, facts. And if the sex is not working,
talk to them.
Talk about
it.
Which is wild. Because
there were moments where it didn't work with us, and we had some very uncomfortable conversations.
I wasn't gonna say that, but we here now, so let's do it. Like the casuals, hey y'all, if your kids are here, like
they shouldn't be watching this anyway.
Put them away real quick.
You know we be cursing and drinking liquor during these shows.
You know we be cursing and drinking liquor at this show. You goddamn son of a mother. I'm gonna bleep all.
Oh yeah. So I'll say that's kind of excessive.
The casual sex you have when y'all are just like FWB, you know what I'm saying? When y'all friends with benefits is different from the sex y'all have in a committed relationship. I don't care what nobody say. It's different. Even if just by virtue of expectations is different. The sex y'all have as a before you have a baby couple versus the
I'm about to
pregnant sex versus how much more time we got?
We have 10 minutes.
Okay. Versus pregnant sex versus like postpartum sex. Different universes, dog.
You win the award for being mindful of my changes postpartum. Like legit, I'm not gonna go into details, but this man deserves an award. He did his research. He knew what to do, what not to do, and that situation could have gone horribly. But thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know if I've ever told you this.
I didn't even know you knew.
No,
I didn't know you saw it.
I be telling my friends all the time. It was a great experience, and not only physically was it a good experience, but I just really felt understood. I felt seen. I felt like he really cared and understood what my body had gone through and the turmoil, and was just very sensitive to that. So I really, really appreciate you for that.
Baby, that's a part of the, you know what I'm saying? That's what you sign up for when you in a relationship. But
not everybody gets that.
Let's put a pin in that, because the conversation we need to have is about sex and sexual appetite.
Yeah,
and
we'll talk about that in
and
a
how that
video.
works.
Next, sit down. We're going to put a pin in it.
Yeah.
Next sit down, we're going to be talking about how sex changes after marriage and how it changes after you have children.
And we also want to talk about how this thing right here attracts a lot of women. And they will
babies.
Babies?
Seeing a man with a little baby?
I think it's baby. The way that women look at me with the ring versus when I started putting this joint on.
Really?
Oh my God.
All right, we're going to talk about that
It's
next
crazy.
episode.
They will house your wife you to death.
What?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'm ready for this conversation. We're going to do this one next.
Yeah.
But let's land this plane. I personally feel like the way that sexual submission comes into play in a relationship is very relationship specific. I just think that's just what it is. And I think, at its best, it's very relationship specific. And if you can communicate that and it can be received well, then that can mean whatever you want it to mean.
I don't know what it looks like to be a sexually submissive man, nor do I have any interest in knowing what that looks like. That's just not, that ain't my sexual character profile at all. No, I'm good. I'm okay. And just to be clear, that's not a sexuality thing.
No,
because you can be a man who identifies as heterosexual and prefer to have a more sexually dominant female partner. That's not my swag. But that could be somebody else's thing.
Hypothetical situation. You can have a traditional idea of submission within a marriage, whereas sexually it could be flipped.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's basically what I was saying. Yeah. Sexual submission is whatever it means to you and whatever the dynamics mean sexually in your relationship. Because I feel like who you show up in the world isn't always who you are sexually, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I want more people to be okay with that.
It's totally okay.
Yeah, I need more people to be okay with that.
It's totally okay. And I will be the first to say, and I don't mind admitting this because I think, there may be other women who agree with me. Like, who I am or how aggressive and how confident I am in the real world isn't always who I was sexually. Like, sexual confidence wasn't... It wasn't.
I never thought about sexual confidence with women. What do you need to be confident about?
See, that's another thing. I feel like I don't really talk about that often with my girlfriends, which is funny because like we do a lot of like hee, like really like faux pas kind of conversations. And I think in my talking to you, I also don't have sex with women, so I don't know what sexual confidence looks like with women outside of what you see on TV.
And that shit varies.
Yeah, I don't know if how I feel is normal or abnormal, but what I do know, it's very different from what I see on TV. So, for a long time, I felt very self-conscious about that, and it was way further into our relationship, like more recent than not, that we had that conversation.
You expressed that to me when we first started talking. You made me feel like I was
Well, I was very taken aback. Like I was very like
What were you taken aback by necessarily?
Just like I don't want to use the word aggressive, but like you were just very sexually confident. And I don't know many men that are. I know men who fake it, but I can see past that. Like you are very confident. Sexually,
maybe
you're
I'm
confident
very, very, very good at it.
But let me also say the men that I have encountered have not been as confident as you. So me meeting you and me dealing with you in that way was very surprising to me because I've never interacted, and that's one thing that I have talked to my girlfriends about. Like it's just people just tend to talk a big talk, but not
follow it up with that action. Yeah,
but you always followed it up, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the action that's why we're here.
I just say all of that to say that every man may not be like that, and I think that was also something very difficult for you to understand too, because that's your norm. How else would you know? How else would you know?
Not always. To be a man and to be in spaces with other men, like you can tell who has the confidence and who doesn't.
Can you?
I can, yeah. I'm really good at separating confidence and machismo.
Okay.
It's the difference between. Can you tell the difference between American Cheddar Jack and Asiago?
Actually, yes.
My teenage years were rough. That's the
you were a late bloomer.
I don't like that term, but we can use that. We did. It wasn't even late bloomer, just like men sexually. It takes you a while sometimes to figure out how to use your instrument.
Women too.
Yeah, but you don't have to use it the same way. Like it's.
How about this? It's different, but the struggle is the same.
No. I will say this, maybe it's very shallow. If we didn't have great sexual chemistry, I wouldn't marry you because I wouldn't, like, I'm not gonna lie. I couldn't.
Babe, say less. Same. You don't even have to explain. It's the same.
Appreciate that.
This was a really fun talk.
I had a good time.
I think moving forward, like, I want to do like the live, interactive, kind of thing. But let us know if that works. If you were actually on the IG live,
say something,
and you're watching it now,
let us know.
Let us know. If you're not already subscribed to us, please subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell so you get the notifications of when we post as soon as they post. And hopefully, here we'll edit this and it'll be ready for you on Sunday. And if it's not, don't be mad at us. Life happens.
Y'all will get it Sunday night.
Yeah, or not.
Maybe.
We'll see. Follow the Instagram so that you know.
Yeah, follow us on IG. Our IG is lit. We're at 266,000 followers.
And follow me. I'm at like 28,000. I have some really exciting things happening on my page. I'm a kind of sort of influencer now.
Nah, no you're not. You're not a connoisseur.
Oh, anything. I am.
You a full-blown ass influencer,
I am,
yeah.
And I'm finally.
For Noemie, man. So proud.
Thank you. I didn't know I wanted this life, but now that I'm here, I'm very grateful.
I ain't asked for the influencer life. Influencer life asked for me.
No, they asked for you, and then they saw I was cool in the background. They're like, oh, let me take her too.
It don't matter how you get in the concert,
listen,
fam. Enjoy the music.
I'm in.
Enjoy the music.
All right, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, y'all. See y'all next Sunday.